All right, so I mentioned a little bit in class about tipping and how that can be considered a grading system for servers, 18% tip, 15% tip, etc. So we're going to look at the math behind that now. So and you can kind of infer probably what this is going to be, a tip is an amount of money that's added to the bill for your service. And so you're tipping someone based on the quality of the service, based on a lot of different things. And it's usually a percent. And we mentioned that in class. That's a percent of the bill before sales tax is added. Sales tax is a percent of the item's cost. Now, sales tax goes to paying for roads, buildings, school systems, busing. It goes for paying for stadiums. If you live where there's a sports stadium, it goes for paying a lot of different things. But sales tax goes towards governmental and can't think of the word, but municipal things in town. So sales tax and tip is what we're going to be looking at today. Oops. So lunch. Again, you went out to lunch at a restaurant. Your final bill comes to $27.88. So you got a sandwich and a drink and a dessert. $27.88. We want to figure out the 15% tip. Now, there's a couple ways to do this. I'm going to show you both ways. One way is to do the strict algebra and figure out exactly what 15% of $27.88 is. So I'm going to write that exact sentence out again. So it's what is 15% of 27.88? Because that's really our question. Question is, what is 15% of $27.88? If we knew that, we would know the tip. We have a way of solving that. We can either just set up an equation or a proportion. We can say, well, what is? We don't know what it is. So there's my x. Is means equals in math. 15% as a decimal to the left is 0.15. Of means times $27.88. And so by setting it up as an equation, or you can certainly set it up as a proportion as well, we can multiply and we can figure out exactly what 15% is going to be. So x equals 4.182. However, even though it doesn't say to round, we're talking about money. Nowhere will you ever see a price tag, $4.182. That doesn't work with our money. The smallest denomination we have is a penny. So you do have to round. Even if it doesn't say to round, it's money. Money needs to be rounded to the penny. That's the smallest denomination we have, $4.18. Another way to do this, and it does say in the problem, estimate. I will accept either of these ways, but estimate a 15% tip. If we can figure out what 10% is, and we can figure out what 5% is, 10% plus 5% gives us 15%. So 10% is pretty easy to figure out in your head, actually. All you have to do is divide it by 10, because 10% is 1/10. So we divide it by 10, we get 2. Now again, I'm dealing with money, so really that's 79, because I'd have to round, $2.79. 5%. 10% is twice 5%. It's 2 times as much. So 5% would be half of 10%. So what's half of $2.79? $2.79. If we want to figure out how we can get about $1.40. Again, if you round. So if 10% plus 5% is 15%, $2.79 plus $1.79 is going to give us 7 plus 4, 3, $4.39. Is that right? $2.49, 3. Yeah. And so we're really close. 418, 439, but you're estimating a little bit. So we rounded twice in this problem with the estimating side. We had to round twice, once to get the 279, once to get the $1.40, and that rounding gave us a slightly higher answer. And so rounding is going to give you different answers a little bit, but it is fairly close, and it is a way to do it in your head. So here's another one. Sales tax. Sales tax is 7.25%. We want to estimate the sales tax on a book that costs $19.97. So again, 2 ways to do it. We can say what is 7.25% of 1997. That's our question. So I can set up a proportion. We want to know a number. We don't know, well, we know what the percent is, 7.25%, so out of 100, is over of. We don't know what it is, but we do know what of, the number of 1997. So we can use our proportion is over of, and we can cross multiply and divide. So if I do 7.25 times 1997, I'm going to get 144.7825 equals 100x. Divide both sides by 100. I'm going to get that x equals 1.447825. But again, we can't put a dollar sign on that. We wouldn't ever write money like that. So we need to round it to the penny. $1.45 would be your exact sales tax on a 1997 book. We can estimate too. Now 7.25%, that's not maybe the easiest thing to work out. And so when you're estimating, you might have to tweak things just a little bit. We could get it down to 7.25%, but we can maybe even look at it as, let's round up and make this $20. And let's maybe round down and just make that 7%. Let's see what happens. So I want to know what 7% is. 7%, that I can't just move decimals around so easily. However, I do know that 5%, and 1%, and another 1%, well, that's 7%. 5 plus 1 plus 1, that gives me that 7% I'm looking for. Okay, so I've got a $20 bill. I got $20 in my pocket. And so when you go to the thrift shop and you get your book for $20, because you got $20 in your pocket, 5%, again, we said, well, 10% is just moving the decimal once to the left, dividing by 10. So that's $2. So if 10% is $2, 5% has got to be $1. 1%, now 1%, well, if 10% is dividing by 10, 1% is divided by another 10. It's divided by 100. So 1% is 20 cents. So I'm going to get about $1.40. And if you look, $1.40 compared to the exact amount of $1.45 as an estimate, it says estimate the sales cost. That's a pretty darn good estimate. And that's how you could do this if you didn't have a calculator handy and you needed to figure out what the tax would be in your head. Or if you had a sale and you wanted to figure out how much it was actually going to cost after the sale. So that's something that you want to consider as well. Two ways to do it. We got a very close answer. Either way, you got to show some work when you're doing these problems. Estimate a 15% tip on a check for $21.98. Give these two a try here, the tax and the tip, and I'll work through them with you, and we'll see if we get the same result. I'm going to assume that you paused it and that you worked through the problems on your own. So here we go. I'm going to do the estimating. And so I'm going to say, well, $21.98, that's pretty darn close to $22. I'm going to go with 22. I'm estimating. You can work out the exact, but I'm going to estimate for this one. So I'm going to figure out what 10% is, and I'm going to figure out what 5% is, and that'll give us the 15% I'm looking for. 10%, I move the decimal once to the left. I get $2.20. And 5% would be half of that, so $1.10. If I add those together, I'm going to get $3.30. And that's my estimate of that particular sales tax. Now, of course, if you actually went through the process and got an exact number, you would have gotten $3.30. And so the estimate does match up perfectly with your exact answer. Estimate the tax on shoes that cost $68.50 and $8.25. And so if I'm going to be doing some rounding, I can say, well, that's about $70. and that is about 8%. So I'm going to go ahead and figure out what 8% of $70 is. So if I do 5, 1, 1, and 1, I'm going to get 8%. 5%, well, I know that 10% is $7. So 5% would be not $4.50, but $3.50. 10% would be $7, 5% would be $3.50. 1%, so again, I move the decimal one more time. I'm going to get 70 cents, 70 cents, and 70 cents. If I add all of those up, I get 2, I get $5.60 would be the sales tax. Now again, had you actually figured out the exact cost of the tax on a $68.50 book, or shoes, excuse me, with an 8.25% sales tax, you can get $5.65 would be the exact. If you worked it out exact, would be $5.65. But my estimate was pretty darn close, especially considering that I estimated. I did that without doing any calculator work. I just moved some decimals around and divided. Try these problems on your own. You've got 3 here and 2 here. There's no book work for this one. I want you to do these 5 on your own. Come to school tomorrow ready to ask questions. You didn't get it. You didn't know where to put the numbers. You didn't remember how to set up your simple interest formula. Come ready for questions. Come ready to ask. Put a note to yourself. I didn't get this one. What do I do here? I forgot how to do this. Show me again. I want you to be ready with these questions and have them finished.